Okay, let's start with a question. How many of us went to business school when we started up in business?
I expect there won't be a particularly large show of hands.
No, and that's because most of us decided to go into business just doing something that we love, or maybe something that we're really good at doing.
It's usually a little way down the line that we start to reflect on not actually gaining a grounding in the useful things like sales, marketing, finance and operations.
Yeah, and that's when it all starts to feel, well, a bit difficult.
I'm Nicky. I've been running businesses since 2004, and I'm the founder of the Growth Community, which is a place where businesses come to network and support each other's business success.
And I'm James, and I started my business back in 2020, helping businesses, brands and organisations to unlock the power of podcasting, basically using audio as a way to market and grow their business.
Well, in our line of work, we both meet a lot of businesses and we're constantly learning new things from being around them. Every day literally is a business school day.
So we thought, why not grab some of this good stuff and turn it into a podcast? So please take your seats. Class is about to start.
This morning we've got Rachel Haith here. The reason we invited Rachel was because the whole point of this podcast was to help business owners, people wherever they are in their journey, because actually we go into business and we don't always learn all the things that we need to know in business. And there's lots of really practical stuff, but actually there's some really fundamental stuff as well about business ownership. And that is about the mindset you have about being in business. Because we can be brilliant at business. We can be really good at our marketing. We can be great at sales. We can manage our business and we can grow it. But once we hit a bump in the road, that's the point where the mindset becomes very apparent, isn't it? So, Rachel, do you want to start by telling us how you help your customers first?
Okay, so thank you for having me here. It's great to be here. I am a coach and speaker, so I help people with their foundation level of self-belief and in order to empower themselves. I strongly believe that if you can cultivate a really strong foundation layer of self-belief, it's the fundamental thing that you can then build a really strong existence, business, life on top of. So it's getting to the root of who you really are, what you really want, and learning to love who that is, and then being able to make those decisions that lead you to the things you actually want in your life.
When did you realise that was your calling, that was what you were meant to do? I guess I'm kind of asking like a bit about your background and kind of the journey that led you and what that moment was where you were kind of like, that's what I can help people with.
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey. My background, my career, my formal career, if you like, I was an officer in the Royal Air Force.
Oh, right.
And when I was leaving that career, one of the things I chose to do as part of my resettlement training was to do a professional coaching diploma. I'd always been really interested and fascinated by psychology, people, the interrelations of people and how they work together, all those things. And I'd had an experience on a course I'd been on with an NLP master, neuro-linguistic programming for anyone that doesn't know. And I found it really, really fascinating about, how we all assimilate information and, what the difference that makes, but specifically the difference that words can make, the language we use, the importance of that. So that set me off on a path, right, I want to do something with my resettlement that's to do with learning around the coaching space. And about a month into my 6-month professional coaching diploma, I was doing it for enjoyment purposes and my own fascination. I very quickly realised that it was what I was put on the earth to do, and the journey I went on as part of that diploma was incredible. So I felt moved to help other people achieve the same for themselves.
And that's a really good point, actually, because I think that's how a lot of people come to business, isn't it? They come to business because they love what they do. They realise they're good at something and they think, hey, I can make a business or a career out of this. This could be what I do professionally. Now, that's not always a good thing, but for the majority of people it is. Yeah. But, they come to it. And this is the case for a lot of small businesses. They come to it from that point. Do they have all the right things in place? Unlikely. They might have some of them. And I think, you might be really, like we talked about this on another podcast where we talked about, you might be brilliant at marketing or you might be brilliant at numbers, but you're generally not brilliant at everything. No. Hence why we're doing this podcast, to help people upskill to the things they need to do. But what is a mindset exactly? You know, what is mindset? What is it? What is it about it that we need, that we understand?
Yeah, for me, it's all about developing your resilience, because one day you can have a mindset where you feel really positive and you think, great, I'm going to do great things today. And then the next day, because something's happened, someone said no to you or whatever it might be, all of a sudden your mindset feels like it's on the floor because you've had a knockback. So it's about your resilience, how you bounce back and how you're able to deal with the things that happen, because inevitably in business there's many ups and downs. I mean, it's one heck of a roller coaster.
It is.
And it's putting things in place that help you to be able to bounce back, because you know the challenges are many and varied when it comes to business.
Yeah, and actually there's sometimes it's more negative a lot of the time than positive, and that's you know that's one of the risks and challenges of being a business owner at the end of the day, isn't it? That's kind of what you sign up for.
Yeah, and it's being able to see through all those things and still keep an eye on your future vision.
So what's the difference between counselling and what you do? And I ask that in terms of the fact that I would imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that a lot of people that you end up working with have found you, have come to you because something's happened. They've had, you know, whether it's a particular kind of negative thing that's gone on and realised that they find themselves in a particular place, rather than thinking everything's great, but that's something that I should keep on top of. So I'm gonna work with someone to make sure that I keep on top of that thing. Yeah. So where's the line between those things, or is it all about whether there's a qualification written on a piece of paper or something?
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of that. The lines are quite blurred because the approach with both is quite similar in terms of there's a belief that the person, the individual, has their own answers. We're just trying to create the space for them to work out what those answers are.
Yeah.
The difference quite often is that people will seek counselling because of trauma, whereas with coaching, it's more about, you know, needing help with a life decision or not feeling satisfied where you are but not knowing what to do about it. There doesn't mean there isn't trauma that's been involved in the past, but it's not about that trauma, and that's the biggest difference I've found in my time as a coach.
It's dead interesting, this, isn't it? Because you know, everyone sort of says you should definitely like work with at least one coach, and actually you might have several coaches to help you with different things. And it's so normal in business, and it's encouraged in business. But if you said, "Oh, I've got several counsellors that help me with things," people will go, "Ooh," and probably think there's something wrong with that person. It's just strange how, and even then, like, you know, someone who's a consultant, again, it's about them helping guide you to the answer that you probably already have. You've probably got that in your mind. It's someone that can help extract it. So it's a real kind of wavy sort of line, and actually it's mindset about how we see those things differently. It's our mindset that, like, counselling means, as you said, trauma, something really quite serious has happened. Whereas actually we should probably all have a counsellor that we see every few months just to chat about stuff that's going on and help us keep on top of how we feel about things. It shouldn't really be like you need something to go like tragically wrong in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
To talk about things. And it just feels like something that's changing, and the fact that people are very open to the idea of working with a coach is maybe step one in terms of that change and that stuff happening.
Would it be fair to say that, certainly from a counselling perspective, there's an element of having to heal something before you can kind of move on, whereas with coaching, it's not necessarily about looking backwards, it's very forward looking, and it's about growth in whatever level or what type of growth you're looking for, whereas with counselling there's something to mend first before you can actually move forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Coaching very much does have a forward focus, looking at the plans that you're going to make to get yourself to where you want to be. You know, there's usually an acknowledgement that there's somewhere you want to be and you're not there, so you need to work out how to get from A to B. So very much future looking.
And where do you think people are generally, at what point in the journey are they? Because like we said, with the best will in the world, you'd say, let's start a business, let's get my mindset right and then crack on, which nobody does. No. So whereabouts in the journey, does it vary enormously, or is there a kind of a point in the business journey where someone acknowledges that they can't move forward because there's something in the way and they need to deal with that from a mindset perspective?
Very much differs for different people. I think when people engage the services of a business coach, for example, it's easy to understand. People appreciate, a business coach is going to help me grow my business. For some people, in terms of life coaching or personal coaching, there needs to be some kind of tipping point where they realise, actually, this is a priority, this is something that can really help me. So usually that's not going to be the sort of thing that people reach out for when they're starting their business journey. Although they might reach out for a business coach, they wouldn't necessarily reach out for a personal coach. I think it does take time and reflection and some personal development to some degree, whether that's reading books, listening to useful podcasts like this one, to get to a point where they do start to realise that actually, there are things I need to look at here and deal with to be able to move forward and get to where I want to be.
And I think we touched on this earlier. We use coaches a lot in business, and there may well be a number of different types of coaches that we use. And I'm a firm believer in this myself. You need different coaches at different points in the journey to do different things. And actually, those coaches should almost dotted line into each other. If you were with a business coach and they can see that actually you aren't moving forward because actually you don't believe in what you're doing, and when you're trying to sell stuff and you're getting all the knockbacks and it's knocking you back massively, there's a problem there in your mindset. It's not that you can't sell, it's what you believe in. And so you need different people along the road to do that, don't you? To hone in on what's needed. So we talk a lot about Steve. So Steve's our...
Indeed.
Is our business owner. If Steve has kind of reached a point where he's feeling like he's kind of hit that rut in the road, feels like he's not really moving forward, and he feels like everything feels like a setback, what would you do with Steve? What kind of things would you work on with Steve to help him to overcome that kind of hurdle in the road?
Yeah, there's a huge part of this. It comes back to self-belief again. So it's all about working on really getting to know who you are. What are your values and how does that impact how you operate in business? Because your own values, you are the business, so your own values will reflect in your business. And on a fundamental level, do you believe in what you're doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? We all get into this for one reason or another because we feel motivated to do something, to achieve something. What is that? What does it look like? And I think sometimes it's about just opening people's eyes to what's actually going on for them to then have a clearer view of how they take that forward. And obviously self-belief, we're all human. We all have moments where I consider myself to have a really strong level of self-belief and self-love. Doesn't mean I don't ever get knocked though, but I've cultivated that through getting to know who I am, what makes me tick, and what I want to achieve out of what I'm doing. And when you can really start to acknowledge all of that and become clear on it, I think it helps you to become more resilient and to bounce back more quickly. And, when you have those moments of self-doubt, you don't go down as far and you don't stay down as long.
It's a really interesting point you made about values. That really has a massive dotted line into your brand of your business.
Absolutely.
Which again, people sort of don't do that when they start a business. A lot of people don't think about it. It was something I thought about massively at the start of my business. I didn't do anything until I'd nailed down my why and what my values were and what my vision was and how that all bolted together. Yeah. And when you get that right, not only does it help you to deal with the setbacks because you know what you're trying to achieve and you know that you have to stay true to that, but it actually gives you the confidence to be able to market yourself so much more effectively. Absolutely. Because you live and breathe it, and it does help you a lot when you've got that clear in your head, doesn't it? That's a massive part of your mindset.
Definitely, and it's learning early on in a lot of people's business journey They have this assumption that, I must be seen to be professional and I must be this and I must be that. And, when they get to that point where they realise, actually, this business is me. I am my business. Yes, I'm a separate human being to my business, but everything about this business is imbued with me. And getting in touch with who that is really important. So it's a key realisation. And, a lot of people won't come to that realisation before they start a business.
I'm really wary of asking you the same thing that I asked you earlier, but I'm kind of really intrigued in terms of where what you do in the work that you do fits alongside stuff like mental health. It would seem like there's a slightly blurry line there, but also stuff like mindfulness and being self-aware and feeling like you're in control of what's going on. And I was trying to think of kind of examples of things that maybe people are more willing to talk about now, and it does feel like times are changing. So people would probably, and it's weird, isn't it, when I think about what people talk about, I think, well, what would people post about on LinkedIn? That's kind of become like the test, hasn't it? Would people talk about this on LinkedIn? Would they document this on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And I guess one example of that could be burnout, and I kind of feel like that's a little bit more of a sort of a medical thing. But then the other would be something like imposter syndrome, and people are quite willing and happy to talk about imposter syndrome, and that's not seen as a negative. And I think there's probably other things that people would probably keep very much to themselves, but the idea of imposter syndrome being a challenge for people, they'll be quite honest about and quite open about. Would that be a good example of something that you would work with someone on?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I think in my experience, most businesses that I've spoken to and networked with, that at some point in their journey, there's been an element of imposter syndrome. And it's interesting, you talk about people are happier to talk about it. And in general, yes, they are. But when you're starting in business, you don't want to admit that behind closed doors, you're actually, oh God, self-doubt is creeping in. Can I do this?
Isn't that weird in terms of the fact that it actually takes quite a lot of self-confidence to be able to admit to having imposter? There's a huge contradiction there. That's so strange that you have to have that certain level of confidence. Because you're right, at the beginning, you think, I'm just going to try and mask over this. I don't want people to know, because you genuinely don't know whether or not you actually do know what you're doing, do you? But I just find that fascinating. Yeah,
it is. And it's something, I think, because it's so much more openly talked about these days. And again, if Steve is listening to the podcast, then I think business owners are much more likely to come across it far earlier in their journey these days than they perhaps would have done. And as with all things, whether it's burnout, whether it's imposter syndrome, the more it's talked about, the better. But I think it's that acknowledgement that when you say it out loud, yes, that takes courage and that's difficult, but you start to realise that there are lots of other people in the same boat, and that actually it's perfectly normal, whatever normal is, and it's something that many people struggle with, and it's okay to talk about it and to deal with it.
And that's why having a community of other business owners around you can be so powerful.
Absolutely.
Because, you're building relationships with people. You are getting to know and like and trust each other. Yeah. And you do feel more comfortable to share how you're feeling. And I think imposter syndrome is cyclical in some ways, because you can kind of start off thinking, oh God, I've started a business. What if anyone can see through the fact that I haven't really got any clients yet and I haven't really done this? And then you sort of get that next level of confidence and go, oh, actually, I'm doing this and I am quite good at this, and that's good. But then something comes along where someone will say, what about doing this, or working with this client, or what about being asked to speak about what you do? And you think, oh, no one wants to hear what I've got to say. I don't really know anything. It's all feels very uncomfortable again. And you've got to almost go through the cycle again of putting your mindset back to say, do you know what? I do know some stuff. And actually people do like listening to what I've got to say. And I do have some value to add. But I think you just always, if you are growing, you are going to hit those imposter syndrome moments all the time, aren't you? There's going to be this cycle of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a journey. And it's one of those things, it's a journey. Once it starts, it never stops. The Pandora's box scenario, once it's open, that's it. In terms of personal development, absolutely. It's, just because you've got yourself to a point where you've cultivated really strong self-belief doesn't mean you're then never going to have doubts ever again. It just means you're a bit less shakeable. But the more you then do it and more you go round that cycle, the better able and better equipped you are to be able to deal with it and be able to move forward perhaps more quickly than you might have done at the beginning.
It's a bit like creating really good foundations in the first place. So if you are building the tower on top of it, the foundations keep the tower a little bit stronger when it is shaking, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a weird kind of almost like a seesaw, isn't there, between sort of confidence on one side and kind of, I guess, vulnerability on the other side, because. Yeah. So I've talked a bit recently about how I had a few months where things were quieter and business slowed down, and so that could be seen as almost admitting, like, actually the business is not going in the direction I wanted it to. That's almost like admitting there's a bit of failure on my part, and I think that takes a little bit of confidence to be able to show that vulnerability and be kind of like, yeah, actually, it's not brilliant at the moment, so I'm doing this, I'm doing the other, and yeah, I'm just not sure about this. And sometimes, like, you know, kind of the ability to show that vulnerability and to feel quite confident about being open with it. It's a really delicate balance, that.
It is a balance, and I think vulnerability is a superpower. If you choose to use it, it is a superpower, because you can guarantee there will be loads of people that if you post about that on LinkedIn, they'll sit there and say, yep, that's me, or that's been me in the past.
Absolutely.
And so having the confidence, and it, you know, like you say, it's a real chicken and egg thing, isn't it, in terms of the confidence to be able to do it. But it's almost one of those things of feel the fear, use that fear and do it anyway. Don't let the fear hold you back. Do it, because people will connect with you, and it all comes back to the business is you. So if people resonate with you and realise that actually you are a human being, you're not always at the level that you might like to be, whether that's in terms of mindset, whether that's in terms of sales, they realise that, oh, it's okay that I'm like that too, and that draws people to you.
And I think we've talked about this before in this podcast, that actually what is very surprising for a lot of people is that when you do ask for help, how much help is out there, how many people actually do want to help you, and that, you know, there's an awful lot of support and knowledge and all kinds of things that people will sweep in and they will help you. You've just got to have the confidence to ask.
Yeah, we're conditioned to believe that we need to get on with it. We need to be independent and professional. We're in business. Yes, all those things are great, but absolutely, we need to be vulnerable and say, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I can learn from the people around you, which is, you know, goes back to what you said a bit about it being so important to build that network around you of people that you can learn from, and, you know, get to the know, like, trust factor, so that you can then ask for that help.
I never really kind of thought about this and realised before, but as I think back now, and again, I'm judging things here in terms of LinkedIn and kind of response to stuff, but the posts where I've talked about perhaps slightly more serious things and, shown some vulnerability, just being honest about challenges and stuff like that, I've probably by far and away got the most interaction out of anything, and quite genuinely, like, people, you know, just saying, I'm really glad that you spoke about that. I did a post a few months ago now about how I ended up in a situation where I had like 45 grand in overdue invoices from, particularly from one difficult client. And I decided to post about it because I was not sleeping because of it. Like, it was really bothering me. And I posted about it and I was really nervous about doing that. And then just a really overwhelming reaction. Quite a few people at message say, I'm so glad that you've spoke up about this issue. And I'm like, I didn't realise that I was like becoming a campaigner, that, like, you know, that was me speaking out on this issue. It was just me being honest about something. But the reaction that got back, and not just that, other things as well, where, you know, being quite honest and, as you said, showing that little bit of vulnerability. But it's not, I'm not saying vulnerability is a marketing tool, but just being yourself, being honest, and people being able to relate to you. People, generally, they're pretty good, aren't they? As you said, there's always people that are willing to help. But actually, I think people are very understanding. You've just got to give a little to get that back.
And I think that's a really important point, certainly from a networking perspective, is that we can sometimes, in networking, we think we're going into business networking to meet businesses. We're not. We're going into networking to meet human beings. And they're humans, and they are complicated, and they aren't just a business. They've got a whole load of other things going on with them too. And I think being more aware of the fact that people are humans and that we're all going through very similar things is quite empowering, actually, because, you know, you're not the only person who's having the same problems in business. Business is, if you speak to any business consultant or coach, will tell you that business it's cyclical. There are certain points in the cycle where things go a bit crap, like year one is hard. Year one, it involves a great deal of, being very dynamic about your business, because what you start with at the beginning is not where you'll end up at the end of your year one, because chances are people won't buy what you thought they were going to buy, and they actually want to buy something else, and you've got to decide whether you want to sell that, or whether that is where you want to go with your business. So year one can be very dynamic. Year 3 is also another year that can be very tricky for people. And you speak to a lot of consultants, they say the same thing. Year 3 can be a big one. It's where the business has kind of reached a certain level, and there's a whole host of things you need to do with that business in order to take it forward. So there's all these cycles going on. And like you say, if you've not got that foundation in place, the belief, the why, what the values are, what the vision for the business is, and if you're not staying true to that, even though sometimes it's quite hard to stay true to it. You look at someone, they want to be a customer, and you think, you don't sit with my values, we're not going to get on, but actually I need the money. And you take them on, and it's a nightmare, because you don't get on, you don't work well together. They actually are not cost effective. And so I think understanding all that stuff allows you to grow your business properly, and actually makes you more profitable in the long run, because the clients you do take on are worth more to you, not only from the fact that you enjoy what you do and they pay you, and they want to work with you on a longer term, but also those people are also your advocates. They help you get more business. So if you are really clear on those values, and you only get the customers that sit within that whole mindset thing, and they help you find more of those people, then actually, ultimately, you are going to be far more successful in business if you just stay true to all of that, even though sometimes it is really hard not to.
Yeah, and that can take a lot of self-belief and confidence to carry through going through that.
And it also affects, the amount you charge those clients.
Yep.
Because, we were actually having a conversation about this earlier, about, the sleepless nights you have sometimes about having to put the price up. And you think, well, people pay that, but actually you do need to put your prices up, and you do need to charge what you're worth, and you do need to be clear on your value. So, all that stuff, it might, you might sit there in your mindset, but actually it's all bundled up together, isn't it? If you don't get that right, then actually all the good stuff that you want to get out of your business is going to be so much harder to achieve, because you weren't clear in the first place on what you were trying to do.
Total side note here, but we should do an episode about pricing at some point, because I think that's really interesting, because it's still one of those things that people are very, very cautious about talking about, and very nervous about. I hate talking about what things cost people, but even down to like the vast majority of websites still don't have any prices on. Like, people just don't talk about their prices, do they?
No.
And that's odd. That's something that we should make a note of that. We'll do that.
That's a big mindset thing.
That's pricing.
You're right. It is.
That's one for
if you don't have
3.
that mindset right, trying to actually have that conversation and being really clear on it, everything stems from it. And and the words that we use, being really clear on language in our business as well. Is it Henry Ford that said, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right.
Yes.
That is so important, isn't it? I mean, I instill this in my own children. They say I can't do things, I'm like, there's no can't.
Yeah.
It's whether you want to.
Add yet to the end of the sentence. I can't do it yet.
Can't do it yet. Or do you actually want to do it? Because if you want to do it, you will do it. If you really don't want to do it, and it's not part of what you're going to do, then you're right. You're not going to do it unless you make a decision about why you're doing it, and crack on and get on with it, isn't it? It is a massive thing. You hear a lot of people use, I'm going to try, or I'm going, and actually
take out the try, just do.
John McHale, I worked with him over the pandemic, and literally, if you used any words like try or I might, or anything, like, you were literally like, you'd be hit down in flames. And he's right. It has completely transformed. If I hear that word even forming on my tongue now, I don't say it. And I'll reframe it quickly.
I've got some guttering that needs fixing though. I'm not gonna try that. I can't do that. can't fix guttering.
Because
I will
that's
die.
coming back to what is the good value of your time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not anything that involves getting up a ladder. No,
but that's the point, is if you understand your mindset, then you know where you should spend your time as well. You understand your own value. Your own value is that it's far more economical for you to get someone else to go up that ladder and fix your guttering, because it's going to take you like 4 times longer and possibly several injuries later when someone else can probably do it in 10 minutes.
I kind of feel like we've barely scratched the surface here. We're just kind of getting into a bit of flow, and we've got to wrap things up because we're running out of time. But have you got any homework that you want to set anyone that's kind of listened to this and thought, okay, right, what should I do next?
Absolutely. Okay, so there's a few things that I'd like to mention. So first of all, it's really important to use the positive language around what you're doing. Obviously, we've spoken about that. So I want you to think about something that's a challenge in your business. And usually people will say, I'm rubbish at X, Y, Z, or I can't do that. And I want you to reframe that. So add yet onto the end. I can't do that yet. Or I don't have those skills at the moment, but I'm willing to learn, rather than defaulting to the negative version of I just can't or I'm rubbish.
I can't fix guttering yet.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't like doing the bookkeeping, so I'm going to get someone else to do it.
Indeed. Something else that would be really, really useful, get a pen and paper and sit and do a brain dump of why you're doing what you're doing. I think even for those of us that have been in business for a while, it's easy to lose sight of what's motivating us. Why are we so driven to do this thing? What are we looking to achieve? Do a brain dump of all of that and remind yourself of that. The other thing I would suggest, the last thing, coming from at everything you do from a place of gratitude. Now, this has been an absolute game changer for me in terms of mindset. My homework is to name 3 things that you're grateful for. Now, you can start small. You can be grateful for the fact you had food in the fridge for breakfast this morning, grateful for the fact you had a bed to sleep in, really simple stuff. If you choose to then make that a daily habit or a regular habit, it becomes far easier to then think of things each day that are much deeper than that. You're grateful for the support network that you have around you. You're grateful for the love that you have in your life, for success when you have it in your business. But coming at everything from a place of gratitude means that even when the times are tough, because they will be tough in business, even when times are tough, there is always, always, always something to be grateful for. It's not always easy to find. You might have to dig to find it, because it seems when the chips are down, you think, everything's awful. There's always something. It might just be that you've got someone from your business network that you can have a chat to and say, look, I'm struggling with this. And then, you're grateful to have that person available to you. So gratitude for me is an absolute game changer and something I would recommend everyone have a go at.
And it's so reflective as well, isn't it? And allows you to see how far you've come sometimes. Sometimes that's all you need when everything feels really hard. Being able to just go, I did that and I moved on. And actually, I moved on, even if it was just like 1%, tiny little step forward, it's still a step forward, isn't it?
Yeah, so, definitely.
Yeah.
I want to echo that as well, because this is something that I started doing probably just over a year ago. Every morning, wake up, what's bringing me joy today, and what am I grateful for today? And for me, it can even be something as simple as, I'm grateful because I've got a roof over my head. Some other people don't. It's verging on like whataboutery, isn't it? But it's like all these things that are going wrong. But you know what? There's people that have got things a lot worse, and just resetting your mind around that. And I now, like, sometimes I'll be like, I've got a weekend with my family coming, but I'll save that for tomorrow. That's tomorrow's gratitude. What's today's gratitude? And it's like my whole life sort of revolves around it now, and it really does make a difference. It really does, because we've all got crap, haven't we? Every day you've got crap going on, and it's your choice as to whether or not you sit there going, isn't it rubbish, this, everything's crap, or whether you go, forget that, don't matter, that'll sort itself out, I'll worry about that later on. That's what I do. That's everyone's got crap, I've just got to deal with the crap. And whether or not you focus on that, or whether you focus on the brilliant, well, I get to do this today, or I've got that going on, or I'm off to the football tonight, or I get to spend a day sat chatting with Nicky about stuff with interesting people. Like, how amazing is that? Like, most people are off doing proper work, and I get to do this for the day. But if you don't do it and stop and just think about that stuff, it's just a steamroller, isn't it? You are just a production line every day. You're getting up and you're up on your sausage factory making sausages, rather than stopping and really thinking about we've all got amazing stuff. Just concentrate on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen. I've loved this. This has been one of my favourite episodes that I've ever done. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been really great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your attendance today. I hope you've learned something new. Every day is a business school day, after all. If you'd like to contact us, or perhaps put yourself forward as a future guest, find either Nicky or myself on LinkedIn, or you can drop us a line using the links in the show notes. Right, school is out. Please wait for the bell before you leave.